Hey folks! Today I'm going to talk about different mediums for reading RPG books. When I entered the hobby back in the 80s, purchasing physical books in a retail store was the only option. Since then, many new technologies have arisen, such as of course the internet, mobile phones and tablets, and digital publishing formats like PDF, or specialized formats like ePub or Mobi optimized for e-readers like the Kindle. And the RPG hobby has evolved to take advantage of these technologies in various ways. Some of those changes have to do with how we play the games. See my previous video on the subject of virtual tabletops, VTTs, and alternative solutions to play RPGs online. But technology has also fundamentally changed how we purchase and read RPGs or reference these during prep or play. Sure, we can still go to a retail store, if you're lucky to live in a region that has a well-stocked friendly local game store, aka FLGS, and by all means, please do support your FLGS. It is really fun to browse physical store shelves and buy games in person. But you can also order RPGs online, either directly from the publisher, from an RPG-focused online marketplace like DriveThruRPG or itch.io, or from an online retailer like Amazon. Pledging for Kickstarters is another way many of us get access to new RPGs. And with most of these marketplaces, we now have the option whether to purchase a physical or digital book. Physical books are mostly the same as in the past, except that there are now two different types of print books. Traditional offset prints, where a large print run is done by the publishers, kept in a warehouse, and then sold until they run out of inventory, at which point they do another offset print run, assuming there's still demand. Or they might be print-on-demand books that are printed as needed. This is what DriveThruRPG uses, for example. The quality is generally good enough these days, but a step below many offset print books. As for digital books, while Adobe PDF files are the most common format, there are a couple of fundamentally different options. We'll look at a bunch of these in detail shortly. As a side note, the topic of print versus PDF often comes up in gaming circles. That's actually not a debate I'm planning to directly address in this video though. For me, print and digital formats are complementary, so my strong preference is to get both. Print for actual reading on the living room couch, and digital to look things up when I'm at the computer or on the phone. I also enjoy seeing and rifling through my physical books on my gaming shelf. I recognize that this might be a bit ironic, as I'm usually a digital kind of person. For example, there's nothing I despise more than dealing with paperwork. RPGs are pretty much the only exception where I really want physical books these days. Let's take a look at a couple different digital document formats for RPGs, starting with PDF. PDF stands for Portable Document Format. These files generally preserve the exact look of the corresponding printed book, including all the text and image content, but also layout, fonts, colors, and other styling. Let's take a look at an example. This is Outcast Silver Raiders, a very cool RPG that just recently delivered their Kickstarter. I'll probably talk more about this in the future, as I'm quite excited about it. So let's just flip through a little bit. This is obviously the cover. Right here we got the table of contents. And as you can see, especially for spreads like this, right, you can clearly see the art on the right page actually bleeding into the left side, and PDF preserves this quite well. I love the art, by the way. This kind of black, red, and white color scheme is pretty cool. There's some dark pages and then some light pages. So yeah, it's an exact representation of the book. So while this experience, which is essentially identical to the print book, might seem perfect, there are a number of caveats. The biggest challenge is that PDFs aren't optimized for different screen sizes. For example, if you have a PDF for a large format book, say US letter size or A4 for our European friends, and you try to read this on a phone, you will likely have to pinch and zoom in on one paragraph at a time, as the font will be too small otherwise. This can make the reading experience feel pretty cumbersome. Your mileage may vary on tablets, depending on your tablet size. On a smaller 10-inch tablet, for example, some books will look alright, while others will require pinching and zooming. The book's layout makes a big difference as well. Single column layout can make it difficult to zoom in on the full paragraph, requiring a lot of scrolling, even more so if the book uses a small font. Some PDF readers on mobile devices offer special reading modes that are a bit hit and miss in my experience, worth experimenting with. But PDFs also have some advantages. I often alternate between reading the print version of a book, for example while I'm at home, and the PDF version, for example while I'm on the go. The fact that both are consistent makes it easy to find where you left off and pick up from there. PDFs are also great for printing, whether you're printing out the entire book for your own reading purposes or just selected pages. I often do this with important reference information, for example, and obviously character sheets, maps, player handouts, etc. Next, let's talk about ePub. This is one of the most prominent e-reader formats and can be used on both actual e-reader devices, such as the Amazon Kindle, or on phones and tablets using e-reader apps like Google Play Books, for example. ePub is focused on providing a good reading experience on devices of varying sizes and gives users control over font sizes and color schemes, for example white on black, black on white, or sepia. In addition to actual e-readers, this makes it an ideal way for bite-sized reading on my phone whenever there's some downtime, perhaps for half an hour at night before falling asleep. It doesn't require any of the pinching and zooming that PDFs would require on such a small device. However, by definition, it doesn't preserve the exact page layout of the original print book. For some books, especially those with elaborate layouts and lots of graphics, that may make it less ideal. It's also a fairly niche format that never broadly took off. Some publishers, such as Evil Hat, the publisher of Fate, Blades in the Dark, and other games, used to offer ePub versions of their titles many years ago, but they stopped doing this because they felt the additional effort didn't pay off for them. Let's take a look at an example. Here I'm using the Calibre open source ePub reader on my Windows computer. I think this is available for all kinds of platforms, and there's a bunch of other options as well. And I've loaded up the Fate book, which is available for free from Evil Hat. So let's flip through this. So the cover looks just like PDF. Here you see that some of the other graphics aren't quite laid out the same way as in a PDF. So everything looks a little bit less fancy, I guess, but very functional, right? So I can flip through these pages, and everything is hyperlinked like on a website. So I can click on these to get to the appropriate chapters. You can also enable, for example, the table of contents. So I can browse it this way as well and skip around in the book. You can turn this back off again. Everything's pretty configurable. I can change the font size, right? So if I go into the preferences here, actually I can change the font types in here and various other colors and layouts and whatnot. The font size is, it's right here, right? So right now I have it dialed in here, but I can actually make it, I can make it even bigger. So let's go with something like this. And so yeah, if you want to read like really big fonts, you can do that. I'll go back and change it to maybe this. So that works out pretty well. And then let's just try resizing this, right? So if I just change this window, make it really small, maybe this is something that approximates what a mobile phone might look like. You can tell that everything still works just fine. But in addition to these book-specific formats, there are also some web-based formats that can work pretty well. We'll take a look at a couple of those now, starting with D&D Beyond. This is, of course, specific to D&D 5e. D&D Beyond actually used to be a separate company which belonged to Fandom for a while and was later sold to Wizards of the Coast, or Hasbro, so it's now an official WotC product. It's actually the only way to purchase digital versions of 5e, as WotC does not sell PDFs. So let's take a look. In here we can browse the different source books. So I'll just pull up the player's handbook, for example. Yeah, you see the full table of contents. Let's pull up, say, Chapter 9, Mounted Combat, for example. So we see all the content here. You get these kind of nice pop-ups when you mouse over different types of content. And of course, you can also click on it and get to the full page with the stat block and all the other information. So this actually works very well. Another way to browse the content in D&D Beyond is through game rules. Instead of going by the book, you just look for the specific type of content that you're looking for. So you could look at monsters or character classes and things like that. So let's take a look at one of the character classes. Let's go with the Barbarian. And yeah, here you have all the same content that would be in the printed book, right? You have their advancement table and class features and all that stuff. On the left, I like how they have this little table of contents here. And one thing to point out is that this includes not just the paths that come with the player's handbook, the original one, but also additional paths that come with some of the expansions. And you can click on any of them and it'll get you there. Let's take a look at monsters in here as well. You get this kind of searchable table format, and you can filter all kinds of things. So let's say I want to see elementals. You can filter. Actually, I could have just clicked on elemental up here, and that would have worked also. So here I get a bunch of different types of elementals. Here we have air elementals. You get the stat block, and again, I can go to the details page if I want to. One really nice thing about D&D Beyond is that it's actually not limited to official content, but there's also homebrew content that's submitted by users like myself. For example, with the elementals, these are just the default ones that come with D&D 5e, right? So there's air, earth, fire, and water elementals. But actually, a lot of games have all kinds of other elementals, maybe mud elementals or ice or other types. So if we go to homebrew, and now we search for elemental in here, we see all kinds of funky elementals, acid elementals, and so on. And of course, I can also search more specifically. So let's say we want a mud elemental. Then sure enough, there's greater mud elementals. There's a whole bunch. One of the downsides of this is that, so many users upload things. You have to kind of dig around and figure out which one's a good one. You can usually use the number of views and ads as a proxy. So here we see one, for example, that's been viewed by many users and been added many times. And so chances are that this is going to be a pretty solid stat block. Otherwise, this works just like official content. And of course, D&D Beyond is a full marketplace. So you can go to the store in here and actually purchase all of the content right here. And then as soon as you do, it's available for you to browse and search. So here's some of the stuff you can buy. It's also worth noting that D&D Beyond goes beyond pure content. It even pushes a little into VTT territory. So if we go back here, there are actually character sheets. So let's pull up one of my characters from a previous campaign. And this looks pretty much just like the 5e paper character sheet, but everything is interactive. So for example, if I click on history, I get this nice toolbar that tells me, what this is about, or perception, right? It tells me how this is used. I can click on, I think this will likely work with different, like armor, for example. or things like spells, right? So I can click on my mage hand and it gives me a description of how this spell works. That's actually very handy. You can even do die rolls from here. So let's say I want to do an acrobatics check. I can just click on my bonus here and it actually rolls a die and gives me this nice display. So if you're playing Theater of the Mind, this might actually be all you need. If you don't need maps and miniatures and all that stuff, just use this and Discord and you're pretty much ready to go. There are also some useful tools for GMs, such as an encounter builder. Also note that D&D Beyond is not just a web app, but they also have a mobile app that allows you to download content for offline use and provides access to your character sheet anytime you need it. I use D&D Beyond even back when I was playing 5e in person, simply because the character builder was so convenient. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that I would not even consider playing 5e without the support of D&D Beyond, whether offline or online. So overall, this is the type of digital experience that I'd like to see for every game. Even if I'm not a fan of the business model, which essentially forces you to purchase the same content multiple times if you want both print and digital versions. Obviously, the market for D&D 5e is huge, so a powerful tool like this is financially viable. This sadly isn't the case for most other RPGs, and certainly not for those from small indie publishers. Next, I want to talk about Cortex Prime, which I've mentioned in previous videos. The Cortex Prime RPG was also owned by Fandom for a while, who used to own D&D Beyond, so it's perhaps not terribly surprising that they built a similar toolset for this game. I think they were hoping to make Cortex Prime their official in-house RPG, but instead they ended up getting out of the RPG business altogether by selling D&D Beyond to WotC and Cortex Prime to Direwolf. What I like about their platform is that they provide both a PDF for download, so you can download it right up here, as well as a really nice web-based version of the book. They even have a stripped-down version of the book for people that want to get a taste of what the game is like, which is a neat approach in my opinion. That's the Explore the Rules section up here. But let's take a look at the full rules right now. So yeah, here we see the table of contents. It's just like the print book, and I can go to any section in here and look at this. The layout is really nice. It's kind of got the graphics interleaved with the with the text, and there's dice symbols and all that stuff. And yeah, so it's actually very easy to browse. It's really nice to search as well. So, say I forgot how Doom pools work. So I'll search for Doom pool and just click on it here, and there's my Doom pool explanation. And this is a responsive web app that works well both on the desktop as well as in the mobile browser. On mobile, I've actually found this to be much better for reading than the PDF. They're also working on a digital toolset for playing games, so character sheets and dice rolls and things like that, but I don't know what the current status is. They did launch this for Tales of Xadia, which is also based on Cortex Prime, and it looks pretty decent. I see a lot of potential here, especially for games like Cortex Prime, that's essentially a toolkit. The GM assembles the actual game out of modular components by picking which trait sets to use, such as attributes, skills, relationships, roles, values, and so on, and mods, which represents modular rules. This requires some heavy lifting by GMs and presents a major barrier of entry. They need to create their own character sheet, for example, since it's not possible to provide a generic one. It's also difficult for them to succinctly share their game's rules with their players due to the number of permutations possible. I could envision a game builder UI that streamlines much of this and automatically creates a well laid out character sheet, then allows GMs to share all this info with their players, and finally use this for online play. Fate is another interesting example. Many of the Fate books are actually pay what you want, and you can download them for free or any amount you choose at DriveThruRPG or on the Evil Hat website. But there's also an officially endorsed website maintained by a community member, Randy Ost, that hosts web versions of many of the books. So that's what we're looking at here. As you see, they have Fate Core accelerated and condensed, so the actual systems. They have some of the toolkits, like the Fate System Toolkit, Fate Adversary Toolkit, and even some of the different settings and adventures. So let's take a look at Fate Core. Here we have the full table of contents. So for example, looking at the different skills, and let's look at the investigate skill, right? And you can see how to use this. So this is the full text of the book, all freely available here to browse. We can also look at maybe one of these settings, like Venture City, a superhero setting. And here you have things like all the different powers. So if you want to look at how the shape-shifting power works, you can click on that here. So overall, I find this very usable. And of course, the website is responsive and works well on desktop as well as mobile. There's no marketplace though, so it's limited to the books that they choose to make available for free. I mainly showed this here as another good example of what a web-based experience can look like. Next, we'll take a look at DemiPlane. DemiPlane is trying to achieve a similar experience to D&D Beyond, but not limited to a single game. As you see here, they support games like Pathfinder, Avatar Legends, Marvel Multiverse Role-Playing Game, Vampire the Masquerade, Hunter the Reckoning, Alien, Mutant Year Zero, and they're planning to offer a bunch more in the future. The company actually includes some former key employees of fandom, such as Adam Bradford, who worked on D&D Beyond, as well as the Cortex Prime digital tools that we looked at earlier. So they brought on a lot of strong expertise. In addition to content, they also have character sheets and a character builder, very similar to what D&D Beyond does. Let's take a look at a character sheet. So here's a Pathfinder character. I should point out the website is a little bit slow. It's still loading, as you see. Okay, there we are. And yeah, so it's quite similar, right? It resembles a paper sheet. You can click on stuff. Okay, there's the description of what it does. So similar to D&D Beyond, just a bit slower. It's not quite as responsive. I think you can make rolls here as well. So if I click on this, then yep, here I just made my acrobatics check. There's also a marketplace for purchasing content, and some basic content is available for free. So let's go back. Here we see the Pathfinder Primer, for example. This is sort of a condensed version of the Pathfinder rules. And here we have everything we need, ancestries, classes, skills, and all that stuff. So let's take a look at the Rogue, perhaps. And yeah, here we see the rules for Pathfinder Rogues. I haven't spent much time with DemiPlane yet, and they don't actually support any games that I'm interested in at this time. But I do like the idea of an online platform like this that supports all kinds of games, and I'll be sure to keep an eye on it. And there's another option. As I touched on in my previous video, many VTTs also provide access to game rules. I'll show you two examples here, Fantasy Grounds and Foundry. In most cases, you're going to need to purchase the VTT version of the game system either directly from the publisher or from the respective VTT's marketplace. So let's start with Fantasy Grounds. And I kind of showed some of this in my previous video, so I'll keep this pretty short. But here you see the Dungeon Crawl Classics book, for example. So here we got the full book, right? I can see the front cover and all of these sections, characters, occupations. You can page through this just like the actual book. I think things are hyperlinked in here as well when appropriate. Yeah, for example, here we have the description of fumbles, and then I can also pull this up in table form and actually roll on this table right here. So that works also. So it's quite functional. And of course, you can also get to individual aspects of the rules. For example, I can get to classes here or occupations, skills, and so on. And then here we have Foundry VTT. The DCC support for Foundry actually started out as a community project as well. And you can see some of the folks listed here, Steve Barnett, Christian Ovsenik, and Tim White. I've actually played DCC with most of these folks at various online conventions. So they're all great people. I really love the DCC community. They really come together and create a lot of content and tools like this. And then, eventually Goodman Games ended up officially supporting the system, and I think they figured out some sort of licensing deal. So you can get the core rules, but also some of the adventures. And you can either read the various chapters in the Compendium tab here, or you can import them into your own world and access them from the Journal tab. I've already done that here. So now, for example, I can open up the core book text. And this includes all the same chapters of the book that we just saw in Fantasy Grounds, or of course that are in the print version. So here we can look at, say, the combat section, and then we can, page through this. I think here it's basically one long page for each of the chapters in the book. So it requires a bit of scrolling, but you can also click on it here in the table of contents to get to the section you want. So it's pretty easy to actually get to the content you need. So overall, while accessing books within VTTs is a convenient way to reference game rules during play, I don't feel that it's a great way to read full books cover to cover. This means that you'll likely still want to purchase either a print or PDF copy of the book in addition to the VTT version, so you end up paying for the same book multiple times. The added convenience may or may not be worth it to you. So this ends our tour of various digital formats for RPGs. As it turns out, there are quite a few more options than simply print or PDF, and they all have their own pros and cons. I also want to call out an observation about the RPG medium. RPG books are fundamentally different from most other types of books. Obviously, they're not like novels. Novels are read from beginning to end, usually just once, and they consist of text. Maybe in rare cases there might be an occasional image. RPG books are perhaps closer to textbooks. Like RPG books, textbooks attempt to convey a certain topic. They may employ tables, sidebars, or images to help get the content across. But unlike textbooks, RPGs are meant to be fun. We're dealing with games after all. Art plays a much bigger role, and an engaging layout is even more important. Anyway, that's just a bit of a reflection, and this may be why RPGs deserve a more specialized treatment than other types of books. So, what would be my ideal solution? My ideal solution is pretty much a cop-out, as I want at least 3 different formats for my RPGs. Print, for reading on the couch and enjoying on the bookshelf. ePub, or lacking that, PDF, for reading on my tablet or phone. For example, on plane rides or when camping, where I can't carry my physical books with me and I might not be online. And a web version for easy reference when I'm at the computer, for example, during online sessions. And ideally, that website would be interactive and, for example, allow me to roll on random tables with a simple button click, or maybe even integrate with character sheets so I can easily look up class features and things like that. A dedicated website could work, but I'd also be happy to have the book available on a platform like DemiPlane. In fact, in the long run, it could be nice to have all the books available on a single site, even if that carries some risk perhaps. And let me throw out one more idea: audiobooks. Admittedly, this might just be a bad idea or perhaps a pipe dream, but I'd love to explore how this medium might work for RPGs. These days, I struggle to find the time and focus to sit down and read books. For novels, audiobooks have been a great way to consume these. I can listen while I'm doing chores, commuting to work, hiking, or perhaps before falling asleep at night. And I've listened to some business-oriented books on audiobooks as well, not just novels, and this worked just fine. So I wonder if this format could work for certain RPGs. Likely, simply narrating an RPG book cover to cover wouldn't be perfect, so this might take some slight editing or rearranging. But it also might just work. I'd love to give it a shot. I realize that this may seem like a somewhat unreasonable set of requirements. Especially small publishers, and most of the RPGs I enjoy these days would fall under that umbrella, likely don't have the means to publish ePub, web, and audiobook versions of their books in addition to print or PDF. But what if the barrier of entry was lower? After all, technology has come a long way. In addition to solid publishing software, we might be able to leverage generative AI. Here's my vision. As a software engineer, I strongly believe in the separation of information from its presentation. So rather than manually fiddling with text, sidebars, tables, images, etc. in a publishing app, which results in tight coupling between the information and its presentation, and would require duplicate effort to create alternative representations like ePub, websites, or audiobooks, what if the author could focus purely on the content? Write the text, add some tables as needed, such as random tables, or tables that describe level advancements for a class, for example, and loosely associate sections with images, but without having to worry about the actual layout. Then execute an automated, AI-assisted publishing workflow that takes all this content and creates various output formats. It could smartly lay things out in PDF, but also easily create an ePub version or even a website. And even an audiobook would be entirely possible. The technology to generate perfectly human-sounding narration is already here. In fact, it's already possible to use any particular person's voice, and the results are extremely convincing. The AI could also figure out how to restructure the content in order to best adapt it to the audiobook format. And there are many more uses here. AI could easily create a quick reference or a GM screen from the rules text. In my opinion, it's only a matter of time before a robust publishing toolchain like this emerges. And this would make it easily possible for any publisher, including small indie game designers, to create any number of high-quality formats for their game. Something simple would be easy enough to cobble together already, using tools like Pandoc, an open-source app that can translate between different formats. Audio would require a bit more work, but it's all within reach. Well, you've heard it here first. Let's see how the space evolves in the future. That's it for now. Why don't you leave a comment to let me know your thoughts on this topic? What are your preferred formats for reading RPGs? As always, likes and subscribes are appreciated as well. See you next time!